Welcome to an hour of HealthMade Radio. HealthMade is a community for natural health seekers where we educate people about common health conditions and share extensive research on the most effective natural health treatments and promote legislation that protects our health freedoms. A core concept belief is in the innate intelligence and healing power of the body, and if properly supported spiritually, emotionally, and nutritionally, it can find its way back to health. HealthMade Radio will bring information from integrative health experts throughout the world. Check us out at healthmade.co. Health is what you make it. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt, and I will be your host. Today's guest is Robert Tisserand. Robert Tisserand is an international speaker, educator, and consultant on the science and benefits of essential oils and their safe and effective application. In the last few years, he's inspired live audiences in UK, USA, Canada, Australia, Brazil, Czech Republic, China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Korea, and Japan on topics ranging from the therapeutic foundations of essential oils to detailed examinations of the relation of essential oils and the skin. Instrumental in bringing widespread professional and public recognition to aromatherapy, he wrote one of the first books to bring awareness to aromatherapy in 1977, The Art of Aromatherapy. In 1974, he established the Aromatic Oil Company, and in 1988, he founded the Tisserand Institute in London, setting new standards for vocational aromatherapy education. The same year, he launched the International Journal of Aromatherapy, which he published and edited until 2000. He's most recently author of the second edition of Essential Oil Safety, published by Elsevier, a book that sets industry standards for the safe use of essential oils, and in 2015 relaunched the Tisserand Institute as one-of-a-kind online education portal for fact-based education on the potency and potential of essential oils for human well-being. Robert has 40 years of experience in essential oil blending and aromatherapy product development. In recognition of his pioneering work, he's been awarded honorary lifetime membership of the International Federation of Aromatherapists, the International Federation of Professional Aromatherapists, and the Alliance of International Aromatherapists. He was privileged to receive a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Alliance of International Aromatherapists in Denver in 2007. Robert Tisserand, it's such an honor to have your show, and in fact, your book, I have it right in front of me here, The Art of Aromatherapy, was the first aromatherapy book that I ever bought many years ago. So it's truly a pleasure having you on the show.
Hello, Michael. Good to be here. Go ahead.
So for our listeners out there, what are essential oils? How would you define essential oils?
Well, essential oils are defined as being found in plants. Not all plants contain essential oils, only those that are aromatic. And so, for example, most spices and herbs contain essential oils. So we have cinnamon oil, we have black pepper oil, we have thyme, we have rosemary. The plant creates these essential oils for a variety of reasons, usually for protection. And they're present either on the surface of leaves or just underneath the surface of the plant material. And they're typically extracted through distillation. This causes the tiny sacs that contain essential oils to burst open, and the essential oil comes out as vapor, and it's then condensed. So this is, in a very simple, a very simple description of what distillation is. And then we use those essential oils for a whole variety of purposes. Not all of them the same purposes created by the plant, but some of them are, and some are completely different. For example, it's quite well known that lavender is used for relaxation. I'm assuming that plants don't go in for relaxation. So these are assumptions that we make.
And so these essential oils, I assume that for the plants themselves, they have a certain function, and why? What do they do for the plants?
Well, one of the constituents of lavender oil, which is called linalool, is what attracts bees to lavender. The bees are looking for pollen, and the lavender is looking to be cross-pollinated. And so one of the functions of the essential oil is to attract the bee. But then you have to ask the question, well, why are there something like 200 constituents in lavender oil if it only needs one to attract the bee? And this is where it gets complicated, because there may be all kinds of other functions. For example, protection from fungal disease or bacterial disease, depending on the plant. But also, we don't always know what each constituent is doing there. We assume, it is assumed that many of them do have synergistic effects, that nature wouldn't create this kind of complication if it wasn't for a good reason.
And so it almost looks like then that the essential oils, has all these different functions, and for the plant, I mean, one is then seemingly communication, so communicate with its environment, and that also as a strong immune system function and protection against, you said, infectious agents.
Absolutely,
like foes.
Attraction, communication, repulsion, and protection are the main themes. So in some cases, a predator will home in on a plant through the odor. The plant doesn't want this, but this is how nature adapts, of course. Yeah, exactly.
And for us as human beings, and we can use these oils and for various numbers of benefits, but I mean, what are some of the best ways for us to use them? I mean, because I assume these are very potent, these therapeutic components of these essential oils.
Are they potent? I mean, they're concentrated. So when you distill an essential oil, which typically composes about 1% of the plant material, you then extract a liquid which is 100%, because all of it is essential oil. So you've concentrated the amount of essential oil by something like 100 times. So they're concentrated for sure. And in some ways that, the processing, the extraction of essential oil is a synthetic process. We're not using the essential oil as it occurs in nature because of the concentration. So, yes, they can certainly be potent in a number of ways. That doesn't mean all essential oils are potent in every sense, of course.
No.
But they absolutely can be.
And what are some of the best ways for us to use them? I mean, you can use them internally? I mean, what are some of the best ways that you noticed?
Well, I guess the way to answer that is it depends what you want to achieve. There are books have been written and many thousands of hours have been taught about how to use essential oils.
Yes.
And obviously there are different methods of use, but it depends what you want, because one of the characteristics of essential oils is their versatility. So they can have cosmetic effects, which are purely on the surface of the skin or just below the surface of the skin, and no more than that. They can have psychotherapeutic effects, which are generally just from inhalation, not from necessarily applying them to the skin. And of course, they can have medicinal effects, and the mode of application probably depends on, again, what the purpose is.
So they,
but could be baths, could be ingestion, could be inhalation, and so on.
So when you inhale it, you said it has a lot of kind of psychoactive effects. So it actually has a direct connection then to our brains?
Well, there are basically two things that can happen when you inhale an essential oil, assuming you have a fully functioning sense of smell, and not everyone does. But assuming you have a fully functioning sense of smell, then you perceive the smell of the essential oil, and you are going to have a reaction to that, because when we smell or taste something, we either like it or we dislike it, or we're kind of, somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
So we tend to have what I'm calling an emotional reaction to that. But at the same time, there are psychopharmacological effects. And what that means is that, it means two things. One is that the essential oil can interact with receptor sites in the olfactory bulb. And the other is that they actually go into your brain and can interact with various targets there as well. So the psychopharmacological effects are hardwired. In other words, they should be the same for everyone. They might be a little different depending on our genetic profile, as the same applies to most plants and drugs too. But the psychological aspect is going to be a very individual one. And so the net effect is interesting because it's a combination of these. So we can't absolutely predict what the effect will be for X essential oil for a given individual. We actually don't know for sure what the effect will be. We can say, well, the psychopharmacological effect suggests this, but very often in life, psychological and emotional effects override other effects.
Yeah, I'd like to discuss that a little bit more. We're just going to take a quick break. You're listening to HealthMade Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with one of the world's leading experts in aromatherapy, Robert Tisserand. We'll be right back. Welcome back to HealthMade Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I am here with Robert Tisserand, one of the leading experts here in the world in regards to essential oils, aromatherapy, and how we can benefit from them. So we were talking a little bit about the essential oils and how they can then impact our mind. And you're mentioning that there's really no definite understanding as to how one essential oil will impact somebody and mentally, emotionally, etc. Depression, anxiety, these different mental conditions are, they're just flourishing right now. There's so many people struggling with it. What would you say to them? How should they use essential oils? What should they try first? What are your words to them?
If you're looking for psychological benefit from essential oils, then certainly inhalation is the first way to go, first way to consider. And this can be by various means of diffusion. There are personal inhalers, which you can travel around with, pull out of your pocket, put into your nose, take a sniff, put it away again. There are room diffusers, of course. There are, a whole bunch of ways that you can be inhaling essential oils. I think a really useful guideline is that you don't want to be inhaling the same thing all day, every day, because, common sense tells us we're going to habituate to it, and the research shows us this as well. So in order to maintain an effect, you actually don't want to be constantly inhaling. You want to be inhaling for maybe just a few minutes and then take a break, and then a few minutes and take a break. The exact time is not that important, but intermittent inhalation is a key concept here. And you don't have to inhale the same thing either. As far as depression and moodiness go, there's a fair bit of research, and the general direction seems to be in favor of citrus oils like bergamot, orange, and lemon and lime. One reason is possibly because these are very widely liked across cultures and across ages. So almost everybody will like citrus oils, more so actually than, say, rose oil or lavender oil or many others. So maybe that is partly the reason. And another is the effect that these essential oils and some of their constituents have on the brain chemistry. That will potentially have a therapeutic effect in some cases of seasonal affective disorder or depression. there is no research that shows that essential oils alone can cure depression or can address very serious depression, but they can certainly help in moderate cases.
So the key is, because we a lot of times we find our favorite blend and then we walk around and we sniff on that, again and again and again. So in your mind, the best is then to kind of alternate, that you have then a kind of maybe 3-4 of them, and then you just alternate and rotate those so that you don't habituate then the brain from these specific chemicals. Because I would assume if you're exposed to the same phytochemicals again and again and again, that then the body will, or the brain will kind of break down a lot of the different receptors because it feels overstimulated. Am I correct in that?
Well, exactly. I would, as an analogy, I would say if you're hungry, you eat food, but you don't keep eating and keep eating and keep eating. You stop until you're hungry again. And it's the same kind of cyclic nature, I think, for inhaling essential oils. And you mentioned blends. Yes, blends often work very well, and I would say simple blends. If you're making your own blend, then go simple. 3 oils, 4 oils, maybe 5. And being involved in the process of creating a blend involves you in aromatherapy and in perhaps your own healing process as well. And as for changing, if you're using single oils, you could change from one to another through the day. If you want to use a blend, I would say create 2 different blends and alternate those. Okay.
And can essential oils, can they be overdone? I mean, you mentioned that you need to take a break, but you also, so you have for the kind of the using more the nose, and inhaling the essential oils, but then you can put it on the skin for various conditions as well. Is there kind of a guideline as to how much you should do and shouldn't do, so that can they be detrimental to you?
Yes, they can be detrimental. Let me say, first of all, about inhalation that less is better than more. Even at sub-threshold doses, sub-threshold concentrations, that means you can't even smell it. Some fragrance materials can still have psychological and psychopharmacological effects and change your behavior, which is kind of incredible but true. You really, really don't need any more than the amount you can smell. It doesn't need to be, using more is not helpful usually. As far as topical applications, it gets more complicated because this depends on which essential oils you're applying to where and why. But as a general guideline, you don't want much more than 1%, 2%, 3% essential oil in a base for topical application. The risks of topical application are irritation, skin irritation, allergic reaction, and phototoxicity. And certainly allergic reaction and phototoxicity are really not very nice. You do not want that to happen. You want to prevent it happening rather than it happens and then you address the problem. And this is the reason for caution in the amounts you apply, the concentrations that you apply to the skin.
And so you would use some kind of a base that you put the essential oil in, like a coconut oil or almond oil, or would
right.
That be the best?
I mean, the easiest kind of base to use is a vegetable oil, a fatty oil, and the exact one you use kind of depends on what you have available, or some of them also have therapeutic effects, of course. But that's the simplest way to do it, and you just mix the essential oil into the fatty oil, and shake the container slightly, gently, and then that's a done deal. You can put essential oils into a gel base or a lotion base. But there are issues there with preservation and stability. And so if you're doing that, it's probably just going to be for use over a 24-hour period. Just mix up a small amount and use it. because formulating a product containing water and essential oils gets pretty complicated.
Yeah, I can understand. And you mentioned that there are certain essential oils that can be a little bit stronger to the skin, that can make you also be a little bit more sensitive to the sun. What would they be, the ones that you need to be a little bit extra cautious with in those areas?
Well, the essential oils that are potentially skin irritant, there aren't too many of them. There's thyme, there's oregano, and garlic. You're probably not going to be putting garlic all in your skin anyhow. It smells really strong.
But you won't be attracting bees.
I'm sorry?
You won't be attracting bees with it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it can be good for things like athlete's foot, but it's probably not going to be your fresh choice because it stinks like crazy. So those essential oils you need to keep definitely under 1% to avoid skin irritation. Allergies are harder to predict because they can be quite idiosyncratic. There are a handful of essential oils that are more likely to cause allergic reactions, such as cinnamon bark, lemongrass. But quite a number of people develop allergies to lavender oil, usually after using it undiluted on the skin for a while. And lavender isn't particularly known for being allergenic, but it's very widely used by millions of people. And so we hear of a number of cases, new cases of lavender allergies quite frequently. But almost any essential oil can do this. So the important thing is to appreciate that these reactions are entirely dependent on the concentration. So the more essential oil in your preparation, the higher the risk.
So start small and not as often to see how you're responding with a good kind of vegetable base.
Escalate gradually. Start very low and then put it up if you feel you don't get enough effect.
Wonderful. We're going to take a quick break, and then I know you mentioned a number of different essential oils that I know are powerful for the immune system, and I want to get into immune system and essential oils when we come right back. You're listening to HealthMade Radio. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to HealthMade Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. We're talking about essential oils with Robert Tisserand. Robert, you're talking about a number of different essential oils that can be skin irritants, but I also recognize them for as being essential oils you use when you feel like you're having a cold or a flu, and people are using them to kind of boost your immune system. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, first of all, most essential oils, probably all essential oils, are pretty useful antimicrobial substances. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, this is one of the main reasons that plants create essential oils for their own protection. And so we frequently see good antibacterial effects with essential oils, and they can even be used for surface cleaning or air purifying. Many of them are also useful for antifungal effects, such as citronella is a great essential oil for fungal disease on the skin and very low risk as well. Antiviral is tricky, of course. Viruses are very difficult things to address, but there's some interesting research on influenza viruses and essential oils that seems to suggest they could be extremely useful, although we don't really know what doses would be, how they should be used. There's no clinical evidence, but the research so far looks quite promising for essential oils, including cinnamon bark, for example. But as far as immune system goes, there isn't any good research that I have seen that says this is definitely useful. I haven't seen that. So
what you're saying is that they help you to kind of ward off infectious agents. I mean, because that's what they're used for in the plants, but to stimulate the immune system directly, there's really no research that supports that component.
I haven't seen that. I just don't think it's really been fully investigated yet.
So, taking a step further, you have, when it's a strong breakdown of the immune system when you're dealing with something severe as cancer, for instance, and there are a number of essential oils that people then would use in response to that. A common one is frankincense. What are your thoughts in regards to that?
Well, there is a little bit of in vitro research showing activity of various frankincense oils against various cancer cells. One thing to appreciate is that frankincense isn't a single essential oil. There are several different species, and within those species, there are different chemotypes. And when you look at those research papers, the last time I counted, there were 8 or 9 of them. And they cover 3 or 4 different types of frankincense oil, and of course, different cancer cells. If we're wanting to look for cancer cures, then typically you would need to be looking at hundreds or thousands of studies showing an effect. And also you need some clinical evidence. And we don't see that with frankincense essential oil. With water extracts of frankincense, which are completely different, and again, there are different extracts from different species, the research is more interesting, has gone further, and certainly we can address side effects of cancer therapy with essential oils. This is quite an interesting avenue. But as far as treatment for cancer goes, frankincense essential oil might possibly be useful in skin cancers. There's a little bit of research that does suggest that. And actually, a few other essential oils might be as well for cancer, skin cancer, such as sandalwood oil. There's quite a bit of animal research for sandalwood and skin cancer, more than for any other essential oil, actually. But I think one of the reasons for that is that skin cancers are very easily accessible. One of the issues with treating any internal cancer is getting the remedy to, the site of the problem. And this can be very challenging. There was some research on limonene, an essential oil constituent. Some years ago, there was some clinical research because the animal research looked promising. But in the clinical trials, limonene really had no effect on anybody. I don't remember how many patients it was tried, but a couple of dozen, 2 or 3 dozen patients. It really didn't go anywhere. Interestingly, when we put limonene into the body, and this is the major constituent in most citrus oils, when we put limonene into the body, one of its metabolites is called parallel alcohol. And there's a neurologist in Brazil who looked at the limonene research and said, well, I'm going to try parallel alcohol on my brain cancer patients, and I'm going to have them inhale it, which I think was an incredibly brave idea. But interestingly, it has worked on many of his patients. I actually met him a few years ago when I was in Brazil, and I interviewed him, and I said, well, how many patients, and this was in 2012, I believe, and I said, how many patients have you treated with parallel alcohol? And he said, well, about 500. I said, well, how many were cured? And he said, well, I don't use that word, but about 20% went into full or partial remission. And this is absolutely incredible because these are all terminal patients, because he's using an experimental treatment. This isn't the first treatment that any of these patients had. And if you know anything about brain cancer statistics, this is mainly glioblastoma. Yeah. This is an absolutely incredible result. The challenge for us in the aromatherapy world is that this constituent, parallel alcohol, is not found as a major constituent in any essential oil, which is disappointing.
That's fascinating. And you mentioned, so that's limonene, and that exists in pretty much most of the citrus plant-based ones.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned, the challenge is then to get the concentration to the site, that you need for the therapeutic effect. Going back a little bit to the frankincense, because I know there's so much talk about that. You mentioned that there were several different species, and you said that there's a water extract of it that seems to be more effective. What species seems to be the most promising one of the different frankincense?
Are we talking about the essential oil or the water extract?
The water extract.
Probably Boswellia serrata, because it's a little bit higher in boswellic acids, and the boswellic acids are absolutely seem to be the active ingredients. There are several of them. As far as frankincense and cancer goes, just to re-emphasize, there's no clinical research except on side effects of treatment. So there's no clinical research that shows us that boswellic acid can cure cancer in humans. But so far it does look promising.
Wonderful. We're going to take a quick break, and I'd like to expand when we get back actually a little bit about the side effects of some of the medical treatments in regards to cancer, and you're mentioning that there's a lot that you can do there. So we'll be right back. You're listening to HealthMade Radio. I'm here with Robert Tisserand. Welcome back to HealthMade Radio. You're listening to Essential Oils with Robert Tisserand here on HealthMade Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. Robert, you're talking about the components from limonene and this gentleman in Brazil using that to kind of regress 20% of the patient dealing with brain cancer, glioblastoma. So how did he do that through IV? How did he administer that into his patients to get it to the site?
When he started doing this sometime in the 1990s, the idea of a nose-to-brain route was fairly new. But he knew that it was potentially possible to inhale something and for it to actually get into the brain. And so this is what he did. The parallel alcohol is administered through a nebulizer, through a mask over the nose and mouth. And so the patient just pops the mask on, and the nebulizer is turned on, and it delivers a dosed amount of parallel alcohol over a period of time in the inhaled air. And this, I believe, this is done twice a day. It usually takes several months, even up to a year, for treatment to be completed. So it's a long-term treatment, but it has no side effects at all. And it's incredibly non-invasive. But what they're studying is how the vapors of essential oils actually physically get into the brain through the mucous membranes of the nose.
And how, so there's certain pathways. I know that kind of hair follicles are like extension of nerves, and that they're impacted through the inhalation of essential oils. So what are some of the pathways that these essential oils can get into the brain, or these components can get into the brain?
Well, this is still being studied, but the what I'm calling the nose-to-brain route, which is what it's generally called, is really quite a new field of research for drug administration, for pharmaceutical administration, and the researchers are quite excited about it. Most of them are not using natural products at all. As far as we know, the route into, because the brain is surrounded by bone, skull, but there are holes in it too, and so where there are holes in the skull, close to the upper part of the face, it's believed that this is where the essential molecules are entering the brain, primarily, probably along the olfactory nerves, the olfactory tract that goes from the nose into the brain. So so they use this as a transport system. Then the molecules diffuse through the brain, and then they are eliminated through the lymphatic and cardiovascular system.
And you're mentioning a little bit before in regards to some of the side effects from traditional therapies in regards to cancer, since we're on that subject. How can essential oils help an individual dealing with, obviously, you have nausea, you have fatigue, you have hair loss, you have all these different, immune system crashes, red blood cell count goes down.
Right. How
can you use essential oils?
Well, the areas that have been most interestingly researched are one is nail damage. This may not be the most common side effect from cancer treatment, but there is nail damage where your nails can become, your fingernails can become, or your toenails can become infected and break down almost completely. And there's a mixture of essential oils, and I can't remember off the top of my head what's in it, but this was incredibly successful in treating this side effect. Another one is neuropathic pain, which can be a side effect of chemotherapy. And neuropathic pain starts in hands or feet and then spreads up one or more of your limbs. It's progressive. It's hard to describe, and I've never had it, but it feels a bit like walking on broken glass. People say something like that. It's partly pain, and it's partly a numbness. And again, several essential oils have been really very successful in addressing neuropathic pain, which can be severe. I believe peppermint was the main one used there. And nausea. Also, essential oil blends usually, including ginger, lemon, peppermint, those types of oils have been very good there. There have been several studies for anxiety related to medical interventions of any kind. So every time you have, a medical intervention, some kind of treatment, if it's whether someone's sticking a needle in you or cutting you open or whatever, there's potential, obviously, for anxiety.
Yeah.
And there have been a number of studies there with citrus, usually citrus or lavender or blends, that have shown promise. And finally, for the pain of cancer itself, pain comes in many forms and for many reasons. So pain isn't a single thing we can just say this works for pain. But again, peppermint oil or menthol look very promising for certain types of pain, but also some other essential oils too. So that's kind of a quick overview.
Yeah. And the application of these. So for nausea, do you take that internally, or do you just apply it somewhere, or how do you? What's the best way?
The nausea is by inhalation. Post-operative anxiety as well has been looked at with. I think all of those studies were with lavender oil. That was by inhalation. And neuropathic pain is topical. Okay,
and
sure.
And what's kind of, because before we were talking about that it's good to rotate. Is it the same when you apply it externally? Let's say your feet, you're starting to feel that kind of numbness, burning.
Well, okay, for rotation, I'm talking about long-term use for, let's call it moodiness, mild to moderate depression, anxiety. This is more short-term use, and you're not going to be rotating. No.
Okay.
Just application for a period of time and then stop.
And is there? Can you just keep applying it, or is there a?
Well, there are protocols depending on what it is. There are protocols. So I believe for neuropathic pain, and a 2 or 3 times a day application.
Okay, wonderful. And I know we just have like a minute or so left, but the 5 essential oils you would not do without. What are they?
Oh, wow, you put me on the spot. Okay. Okay, 5 essential oils: lavender, tea tree, sandalwood, peppermint, and rose, because it smells. Yeah, roses. But sandalwood is... Or if you can't afford rose, palmarosa, which is really nice, and very, very...
And I'm curious, why sandalwood? I mean, I know we talked about the skin benefits and skin cancer and those, but why else? I mean...
I just really like it for a whole bunch of skin stuff. There's some clinical research where they use sandalwood oil on pediatric eczema, which looked very promising. And I was totally surprised that you would use sandalwood for eczema, but it looked really, really good. And also for psoriasis as well. There's sandalwood too. For that reason.
Oh, wonderful. Well,
and it smells wonderful.
Yeah, I love sandalwood, but I think it's a little bit of kind of an unsung hero. So that's why I was really curious.
I think so too.
Well, thank you so much, Robert. I truly appreciate your wisdom, and this is such a powerful tool, essential oils, and I wish people would know more about it. And I really suggest the listeners to go and to Robert Tisserand's website, and we'll have that link on our website. And he has some amazing educational tools and trainings that you can do. So please look that up. That's all for today. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. You're listening to HealthMade Radio. Remember to connect with us at healthmade.co. Health is what you make it.